Thank you all for joining us here today at TEDxYYC. Welcome to our activation session, Reimagine Listening. Today's session will be conducted by Tony Esteves. My name is Stanton, and I will be the moderator for today. I hope you are enjoying your day and your experience here at TEDxYYC. But a few quick notes before we get started. So in this session, Tony will be kind of encouraging active audience participation. So if you want to appear on camera, if you're comfortable with doing so, please click the blue button at the top right-hand corner to request access, and we'll try to bring you to the front stage. If you are not comfortable being on stage or showing your face today, that's okay too. Feel free to ask questions in our chat and Q&A, and we'll try to answer that as much as we can. But before we get started, I'd like to introduce the host of today's session, Tony Esteves. International facilitator, virtual event producer, and solution-focused coach, Tony Esteves is passionate about creating human connection. He is the author of Talk to More People, Change Your Life by Meeting People, and holds a BA in Communication Studies. When not facilitating live or managing virtual events, Tony can be found hiking in the Rocky Mountains west of Calgary or performing in the circus. But I will pass it off to you, Tony, and there's a few people looking to get on stage. Do you mind if I also throw them up?
Yeah, please don't throw them up.
I'll throw them up.
For those people volunteering on stage, I see you there, and thank you. We'll bring you up in just a moment. I'm going to share a quick little story first to take about probably 2 minutes, and then we'll get some people up and on stage and into the discussion.
All right, sounds good.
Thank you, Stanton, for that introduction, and thanks to those of you who are taking some time to join us here for this Talk to More People Listening experience, whatever that means. And first of all, I'd like to let you know that I'm going to share a brief story, and then we'll get right into the interactive segment. So I want to ask, did you know that you are already equipped, and in fact your whole life you have been equipped with one of the most powerful tools in the universe to connect with other people? This tool that I'm talking about is something that is so powerful, in fact, that they haven't yet figured out a way that artificial intelligence can mimic it. It's something only humans can do. In fact, you have almost certainly utilized this tool unconsciously many, many times throughout your life, and also created connection doing it. And that's what I'm going to be talking about in today's session, is how to use this really, really powerful tool. But before I get into this tool and describe a little bit more about what the heck I'm talking about, I want to share with you my why. You know, one of the most famous TED Talks ever by Simon Sinek is Start with Why. So I'll share with you a very brief version of my why, in case some of you are visiting from my last session, so you're not getting too much a repetition. And so my why around this Talk to More People concept is that I know and I believe to my heart of hearts that connecting with other people is a phenomenal way to positively and sometimes profoundly change your life. There is an epidemic of loneliness in the world today, and it can be corrected if more people just take small steps to reach out to other people by listening to their intuition, or exploring their curiosity or their playfulness, and most importantly, by using their voice. And today's tool, we're gonna discover a little bit more of how you can do that, and how you can do that without even actually talking to a stranger as well. Furthermore, in my why, I can see a world where people aren't stuck looking down at their phones or looking at their iPads all the time, but rather they are looking up and engaging and intentionally connecting with other people, because this world I see has people in it who know and understand and believe the research that has proven that connecting with strangers is actually very, very good for your mental health. And it's very, very good for your well-being. And it can lead to incredible opportunities. So that's a bit about my why, about why I'm passionate about this Talk to More People concept. And you know, I'm so passionate about it that I still intentionally meet people. I have intentionally continued to meet people during the times of rapid change over the last year and a half, and have continued to make some fantastic new connections. As recently as this past weekend, and this will be the last piece of my story I share before I reveal this amazing tool that you already have. My partner Renee and I were up camping in Jasper National Park for 5 days, and on the last night at the campground, I saw this fellow who had one of those incredible tents, that go on top of a vehicle. And I've never seen one of those close up. I've always just seen them kind of packed up or in magazines. And so I went over there and used the tent as my excuse to say hello to this stranger. And what do you think his response was when I said, "Hey, can I ask you a question about your tent?" Well, his response was very positive, and he was happy to show it to me and explain it to me. And we got into a good conversation. And as a result of that conversation, just because of my curiosity, not only did I get to learn that his tent cost $1,200, and that if you're going to buy one, that you want to also factor in the cost that the rack is going to cost to mount it to the roof of your vehicle. In his case, it was a Jeep. And his name was Kurt, and he was there with his son. And we had a good chat, but also he asked me about what I'm doing here in the mountains and like what am I into as far as hiking goes. And I explained that Renee and I were doing a bunch of day hikes and just having some fun relaxing and camping in the mountains. And he said, "Well, you ever do any overnight camps, like multi-day hikes?" I said, "Well, I've done a couple, but I don't really have the experience, but it's something I've always wanted to do." And he said, "Oh, I'm going to give you my number. We're going camping in August. You're going to come with me. I'm going to take you out for as many days as you can handle it. Looking forward to it." And just like that, a connection was made with a complete stranger. Now, this is just like 3 days ago. And so I'm so excited that this fellow Kurt has come into my life, because just by me being curious and asking him about the tent on his Jeep, we got into a conversation that led to what's going to be a real world encounter. We might become good friends. We might be really incompatible and it could be a terrible camping trip, but I kind of suspect that won't be the case. And so I just wanted to share that story before I get into the tool, because it's a recent example, a recent real world example of how you have opportunities to connect with people all the time, but it takes some curiosity and a little bit of courage to speak up to allow those opportunities to turn into longer term relationships. So what about this tool? And with that, I will encourage you, Stanton, if you don't mind, to welcome everybody who's volunteered there at the bottom to come onto the stage with me as I explain this tool. So this tool is something I call Talk2MorePeople Listening. And what I mean by that, and welcome participants who are joining the stage here as I do this brief explanation. Thank you for volunteering to engage in the discussion. What I mean by this Talk2MorePeople Listening concept is it's actually something that's called using your selective auditory attention, or basically selective hearing. And what that means is we have the opportunity as humans, when we're in any social environment or any place in the world where there are people or things happening, we have the ability to choose what we listen to. And this is that thing that artificial intelligence has not been able to duplicate yet. This is that very powerful tool that has almost certainly helped you meet people in the past. And with people who are interested in participating or jamming here, we're gonna do it. We're gonna see if we can do a virtual version of it. I have led these sessions before on Zoom. This technology is a little bit different, but we'll see what we can play with and what we can make happen, and kind of in a mock-up scenario. And so the way that the Talk2MorePeople Listening concept works, and Patricia Morgan knows this because she's read about this in the Talk2MorePeople book, because it's one of the tools that I offer, is that you intentionally and respectfully overhear people talking. And so the way that works in the real world, like not in the virtual space, is just when you pass a group of people and you hear them talking, you become present by putting your little device down and tune into what's going on. And by tune into what's going on, I don't mean that you barge your head in there and give it the old-fashioned, like, what's going on here? Like, you don't want to be obvious. You want to be respectful. And of course, if it is some sensitive subject matter that is being discussed where you feel like, oh, I probably shouldn't be hearing this, then, well, turn your hearing in another direction, or perhaps walk away. But if you get in the habit of being present when you're out in public more often and intentionally overhearing, what's going to happen is you're going to start to notice things that you can relate to being discussed, whether that's current events or special interests that you have, athletics, arts, you name it, you'll start to hear things that you can totally chime in on. And once you've developed the skill or some skills, or maybe a little bit of courage and curiosity, or just trusted the research that you won't actually likely get rejected when you approach a stranger, although most of us fully believe that we will. If you trust that research, then you'll be able to start joining a conversation. And so now I'd like to see if we can mock it up with my brave volunteers or participants. And if you've accidentally volunteered, don't worry, you don't need to do anything here if you don't feel comfortable with it. Although I will let you know, we're just a small group here. There's about a dozen of us here. We're not on the main TEDx stage with over 150 people watching, or whatever the case is. So the stakes are not that high, especially if you're a vegetarian. There's no stakes at all, right? Okay, so could I ask for, I've got Brendan, Sneha, Denise, and Patricia. Could I ask for two of you to volunteer to have a small, spontaneous conversation? And if you volunteer, just take yourself off mute and just say, yeah, I volunteer.
Volunteer.
Okay, that's Brendan. Brendan is volunteering. Who's our second volunteer here?
I can certainly volunteer, Tony.
Okay, wonderful. Okay, Patricia and Brendan are going to have a short conversation. And let's pretend that the three of the rest of us, so that's myself, Denise, and Sneha, we're all strangers. And Patricia and Brendan are also strangers, which actually might not be too much of a stretch. Perhaps in real life we are all strangers here, except I know Patricia. And I met Sneha earlier, so actually we're all family. But anyways, back to the event here. What's going to happen is Patricia and Brendan are going to have a spontaneous conversation about something that we'll agree upon in a moment. And then our job, Sneha and Denise, and myself, Tony, as well, is once we overhear something that we can relate to, our job is to take ourselves off mute and chime in, like actually interrupt them and say, oh, excuse me, I just overheard you talking about such and such. And because we are able to, create this situation, Patricia and Brendan are going to be extremely gracious and allow us into the conversation, like very friendly strangers, okay? And so that's the exercise that we're going to play with here. And before we get a subject for them to discuss, are there any questions about how this is going to work? And if you have a question, please just unmute yourself and ask. Okay. So let's choose a subject to discuss that's not two P's. It's not politics and it's not pandemic. What's just a friendly subject that we could discuss? Anybody who has an idea, give it to Brendan or Patricia, or Patricia or Brendan. You're welcome to choose a topic.
I thought about Patricia has a great deal of natural light coming in, which is very lovely. And I'm maybe wondering what neighborhood she happens to reside in Calgary, what she enjoys about that.
And Brendan has come up with the subject, and with that, I will allow the two of you to just have a random conversation. And Denise and Sneha and myself, we will try to chime in when we see an opportunity, when we see something we can relate to, by using the phrase, excuse me, I just overheard you talking about, or something like that. Away we go. Go ahead, Brendan and Patricia.
Well, Brendan, did I hear you say that that you could see that the light was coming on my face, that I have good lighting in my living room here?
Yeah, it's beautiful. It looks very natural, like you're probably in a lovely part of the city.
Yes, I am. Yes, so I'm in Calgary. And are you in Calgary?
I am in Calgary. I'm in Crescent Heights.
Oh, in Crescent Heights, that's a beautiful neighborhood too. Well, I live across from the Shaganappy Park. So I get lots of light looking east towards the city. It's got a little creek through it. We often have wedding parties come and take photo shoots here.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And sometimes the news anchors are out there. Definitely dogs. dogs doing their poop. We have an off-leash little area right in front of our house, so that's a popular area. Yeah.
Excuse me. I'm sorry to interrupt. I just overheard you talking about dogs. Is that right?
Yes.
Oh, hi there. My name's Tony, and it's so interesting that you're talking about dogs. My twin sister Andrea, when she lived in Toronto, used to be a dog walker, and she just loved dogs. And they got to introduce her to so many other people, and she had a wonderful time. So I just thought I'd share that.
Well, thank you. I bet you your sister's dog would. That's having some feedback again here.
Oh, that's me.
That's you. Yeah. Anyway, we have a grand dog. We have a grand dog, black lab Nola, and I absolutely adore her. It's the one dog that yeah. Anyway, yeah, dog. Anybody else got dogs? No?
I don't have dog. I don't have a dog, but I do have a friend who has friends who have dogs, and I honestly used to be terrified of dogs when I was growing up. And it was the full force of my friend's golden retriever's unapologetic love that that made me completely shift sides and from fearing dogs to obsessing over dogs. Like if I see a dog during my walks or runs, I try to respectfully stop the dog walker and say hi to their dogs and have a chat with them, which has always been a very unique and wholesome experience for me. So when I finally do decide at some point in my life to adopt a dog, I have a lot of people in my life who have inspired me that I can thank. Yeah.
Well, congratulations on getting over that phobia. And yeah. Did you know that phobias are fairly easy to overcome in the therapy world? Phobias are fairly straightforward when it comes to some procedures that can help collapse that phobia. Actually, almost any phobia. Mm-hmm.
Would that be exposure therapy by any chance, Patricia? Would that be one of the modalities?
Well, yeah, one of the modalities is exposure therapy. There's lots other therapies that have developed over the years because we're learning more and more about the nervous system. And so most therapists now are integrated. I've been doing a deep dive. If you know of our wonderful, anybody ever heard of our wonderful Canadian Gabor Mate?
Yes, in the realm of 100 Ghosts.
Yeah, so he's really helping move forward the works of people like Peter Levine, Stephen Porges, Vanderkoff, that are getting better understanding of how our nervous system can get blocked with these distressing moments. Yeah. I
actually have a few of Peter's books. He's kind of the godfather of somatic therapy. So one of his best ones is In an Unspoken Voice, and that's 30 years of his life's work condensed. So it's pretty powerful stuff.
Yeah. Oh my goodness. Did you know that Oprah and he are doing a big project and are going to be, there's a newly released book tracking Oprah Winfrey's traumas?
Wow. Now, have you watched any of the series with Oprah and Prince Harry on Apple TV that goes into actually diving into their past traumas?
And actually, before you say that, Patricia, I'm going to wrap up this mock conversation and we're going to start a new one. But I want to thank you all very much for your participation in this and for having a chat.
I want to talk more to Brendan. Okay.
No, it's perfect. So you two should connect. You can find each other in the people section of the event, and you can connect offline. But I want to do one more of the same exercise. And if Denise, you're open to it, I'd like to have a conversation with you about something that we come up with, and invite our other three participants, Patricia, Sneha, and Brendan, to join us as they like. If they overhear something and they want to chime in and just get more people to practice that skill. Would you be open to that, Denise?
I'm game for it, sure.
Okay, do you have something in mind we should chat about, or would someone like to offer something for us to chit-chat about cordially while we wait to get interrupted?
Let's see here. Talk about cooking, maybe. My mind's on that because I took part in Chef Joey's session over lunch. So my mind is on food. So maybe we can talk about cooking.
Well,
What's your art?
Well, away we go. So
do you enjoy
I enjoy food so much that I eat it almost every day. And I greatly enjoy cooking. My partner.
Do you make what you eat, or are you more like, are you on both sides of it, or do you enjoy whipping up the dishes, or more kind of on the receiving end?
Yeah, I enjoy being on both sides. So we are both into cooking and preparing food as much as we can from like actual like whole foods. And you know, we got a comment yesterday at the grocery store. Oh my gosh, you eat so healthily, because there was only one item that was a processed food, and we've studied a bit of nutrition and diet in the last couple of years and learned that, oh wow, like more than 70% of processed foods are chocked full of sugar, and sugar is really bad for you. So,
excuse me. You're talking about good nutritious food. Have you visited the Light Cellar?
I've been there before. Yeah, not recently, but yeah, I was there.
Malcolm's place.
Yeah, Malcolm Saunders. What an entrepreneur he is. I just love how he will do demonstrations of chocolate and consume chocolate and know it's healthy. Isn't that exciting?
It certainly is. And he also has experts delivering workshops there on mushrooms, which really neat, since I went foraging for mushrooms a couple of weekends ago in British Columbia for the first time in my life, and we found almost 5 pounds of morels that you can sell to people who then ship them off to grocery stores, and it was a really neat experience.
Mushrooms, you have to be. I was visiting my dad, and he lives in rural Alberta on the weekend, and there was we were sitting by this fire and eating, and I noticed that there was some mushrooms, and you really have to know what you're going to eat. Like, he's picked wild mushrooms before and eaten them, and they taste great, but you got to be careful when you're, I don't know if you're seasoned, if you're picking the morels, but I know I wouldn't know what is safe and what's not. I was picking mushrooms.
Yeah, it's easy to accidentally pick a poisonous mushroom, cook it, eat it, and get in trouble. So I was looking at this one book from a stranger I met on a campground last week, who said, oh, you went, because I told him a story about how I had gone mushroom picking. He said, oh, you have to be careful of the poisonous ones. So there's a mushroom that I believe is called the brain mushroom that looks similar to a morel. I think it's quite easy to distinguish the difference. And yeah, I wish I'd have known before I went picking morels that I should watch out for this particular mushroom that could be an impersonator. And then, what do you know, on our trip in Jasper, we saw the brain mushrooms along the trail. I was like, I'm not going to cut those.
Don't touch.
So yeah.
So what you're actually thinking of, Tony, is called lion's mane mushroom, and the Light Cellar happens to carry that from a company called Newark Organics, which is out of Cochrane. I actually know Malcolm. I did a piece of artwork for the store. I'll hold it up to the webcam there.
Oh, cool.
Ooh, wow.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
Nice.
So I'm down there quite frequently.
Oh, that's great, Brendan. Well, maybe I'll see you at the Light Cellar. I mean, I know lion's mane is recommended for people who are dealing with dementia, and it's very, very good for your brain. And I've had some of it, but I don't have it every day. But maybe I will someday. So cool that you're connected to the Light Cellar.
Yeah, I would recommend it. It's a staple every single day.
What does it taste like? Does it taste like a regular mushroom, or like how do you cook it as you would any mushroom? Or
it's rather earthy. So the form in which I generally get it in is powder, and I'll mix it in with my coffee in the morning. However, I'm also looking at a company called Real Mushrooms, where you can get it in capsule. And their branding is that they only use fruiting body. So it's the caps of the mushrooms, which is the most potent part. So if you don't really want to get adapted to the grittiness or the taste of it, that's another reason.
And sorry, what's it called again? It's not called the brain
Lion's mane. So just imagine my hair, and then but a mushroom.
Fantastic. Fantastic.
I'm going to look into it because I'm all about brain health. So that sounds pretty good.
So you, Brendan, you sound really. I'm curious. What's the difference between the Light Cellar and the Gooder? The good. Yeah, did I get it right? Not Gooder. So the one down.
New Earth supplement company, and I know the gentleman who runs that as well. That's out of Cochrane, so they would supply quite a few health stores around Calgary and actually around Canada. So you'd find their supplements, Safeway, Community Natural Foods, as well as the Light Cellar.
Right, that's the one. Yeah. Community Natural Foods and the Light Cellar. The Light Cellar seems more refined somehow.
Smaller business, and really, really cool culture. They've got some of their own specialty products that are absolutely phenomenal. I get huge bags of raw cacao that I'll put in homemade chocolates or in my coffee.
Okay, wow.
You can see, even though we're doing this as a mock, you can see how easily it can be to connect with other people by intentionally and respectfully overhearing. It just takes a little bit of courage to dare to say, oh, excuse me, I just heard you chatting about such and such. But one thing that I encourage you to consider, and I'm going to wrap up in just a few minutes here, but one thing I want to encourage you to consider is how, we often have these concerns about meeting new people, like we're going to get rejected, or that they're not going to be interested in what I have to say, or they're going to be freaked out or whatever. But it's easy to overlook the fact that if something comes to your mind that you could contribute to the conversation, keep in mind there's a really good chance that you generally do have something to contribute. And that meeting a new person is not unlike a gift exchange. It's like when you share bits of information with other people, you're putting yourself out there and giving them the opportunity to receive the gift of you. And so I encourage you to consider how maybe I feel a little uncomfortable sometimes meeting new people, but I'm going to push that aside and just think about how I can share a bit of myself with this person, because not only might you make a new friend or learn a new thing, as we've just experienced here, but you also might really improve someone's life. You might even save someone's life by just reaching out and connecting with them. So I encourage you to take that away from our session today. And the final thing I'd like to mention is a resource sheet that I dropped a link to. There's a Dropbox link in the chat. And that's just a little 3-page PDF. And on that, there's an excerpt from that Talk to More People book on a technique called triangulation. And triangulation is something, again, that you've done intuitively throughout your life, but maybe not known you've done it, to chat with other people. And that's when you're having your lived experience and you notice something else, such as, for example, a dog or an adorable child or some piece of public art. And you can comment on that thing to the stranger who's nearby, because you're having the same experience. Oh, hey, wow, look at that house fire. Holy cow, that's kind of wild, isn't it? And almost instantly you'll be able to engage in a conversation or a discussion because you have that common lived experience. And so I encourage you to practice triangulation. A sociologist named Keogh Stark, who also delivered a really awesome TED Talk based on her book, which is called When Strangers Meet, explains it beautifully. And I put a little excerpt from the Talk to More People book in that resource sheet. And I encourage you to check it out. So thank you so much for participating in the session today. I greatly appreciate the participation. And if anyone wants to keep in touch, my details can be found on that resource sheet, or you can continue to chat with me throughout the rest of the event today. Thanks for being here.
Bravo.
Thank you. Thanks for having us.
Thank you. My pleasure.